Open the pod bay doors, please, Hal.
So you live alone?
Yes.
Think I'm pretty?
All right, you're gorgeous.
Come to me. When was the last time you touched someone? You don't want to wake up, do you?
Pod bay doors are open. Welcome once again. I am Jerry Dean Roberts of ArmchairCinema.com. And as always, seated across the country from me is my intrepid co-host, Mr. Doug Heller, the film historian and film critic for TalkMovieToMe.com. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing quite well. How are you today, Jerry?
Great. We are sliding down into the cavern of the weird today.
Yes.
Very likely the strangest film we will ever talk about. We are talking about Jonathan Glazer's 2014 science fiction What's It Called Under the Skin.
Yes.
Give me your initial reaction to this movie.
Okay, so I just watched it for the second time only last night.
Yeah.
So, I'm still... It's a lot to unpack. It's, I think, a wonderful, nearly dialogue-free performance from Scarlett Johansson.
Mm-hmm.
Glazer does not hold your hand. It's adapted from a novel, which I haven't read. I'm captivated by it, but I don't know that I fully understand what's going on. I watched it late last night, and that
If you
actually
watch this
kind
in
of
the middle of
helped.
the night, the effect on you is really strange.
I actually kind of thought that it helped me understand it, because the last time I watched it, I think it was in the middle of the day, which made it even weirder. At least at night, it has a place.
I saw this, I had heard about this because it was playing at all the film festivals. This is 4 years ago, and it comes out of the film festivals, and it's one of those films where half the audience just fell in love with it, and the other half walked out.
Yeah.
And I love movies like that. I love movies that are a little bit divisive, because that always signals to me challenging. So I had to see this, and as it made its way around the country, I couldn't wait. I live in Birmingham, Alabama. Our theaters are filled with big tentpole movies generally. These little films might come to one theater. It did not come here.
Right.
So
I don't think it played in Pittsburgh either. So you're just
Well, I ended up seeing it on iTunes. I ended up renting it. And I'm glad I didn't see it in the theater because this is the kind of movie I really enjoy watching at home by myself
Yeah.
because I can be entrenched. I can be sort of engulfed in it, in its weirdness, and I don't have to worry about the surroundings, the people around me. Um, and I can really take it in. I can go back a little bit. I can, if I don't really understand something, I can go back. But there's not that pressure, and you don't have to go out in the lobby and you hear all the negatives, and you want to put your fingers in your ears
Right.
because you're just like I'm so enraptured by it that I can't stand the negatives.
Right.
Because people will write off a movie like this as pretentious just because it
Which I
is
think is,
challenging.
well, it is. I guess it's pretentious. I think people use that word as a catch-all for I don't understand this, and
Yeah.
I don't want to say that I don't understand it, so I'll say that they're pretentious and they're trying to make some weird art house statement that nobody cares about.
Yeah, and a movie like this throws away the conventions that you are used to. It
Hmm.
throws away all of the I won't say the narrative structure because it does have a narrative structure, but it throws away the point of view of a movie that generally, when a director will hold your hand and will guide you
Hmm.
through it. This is not that. You're
No,
thrown into the pool and you have to figure out where you are.
it's it's really the most fascinating movie about a woman asking for directions that I've ever seen.
Uh, yeah, yeah. It's or you could say it's the strangest pickup film you've ever seen.
Well, that's true too.
Um, so let's talk about the story. Um, because it is a very simple story, basically, and I have a really, really rough time explaining this to people when I'm trying to sell them this movie. Because when I get to the word space alien, they're gone. You know, it is based on a book by Michael Faber, which I have read. I'll say loosely based because the book has a lot of details that the movie does not. And if it had been a lot of details, I think it would have been too much.
Hmm.
Scarlett Johansson plays an alien who comes to this planet, and the mission apparently, because you're never really told, the mission apparently is to pick up wayward young men, take them back to wherever she lives, strip them of their skin, and turn them into meat.
Oh.
Somewhere along the way, something in this human mortal coil, strikes a chord with her, and she wants to experience some of it. And her observations of humanity are strange to her. They are
Hmm.
bizarre. Stranger in a strange land. And our customs are strange. She tries to embellish, she tries to be a part of that, and realizes that physically she cannot.
Hmm.
Um, so it's an examination, it's a rumination on what it means to be human, on what it means to be outside looking in at humanity, and the temptation to want to be a part of something that you really can't be a part of. And it all takes place from her point of view. That is to say, an alien point of view. Which
Right.
is to say, there's no emotional pickups here.
Hmm.
It all has a very weird um, template that is seen through alien eyes. Um, and it begins with this really striking image. Let's start at the beginning because it begins with this really striking image. Somewhere in deep space, as we hear these noises and see these shapes sort of coming together, And it takes us a minute to realize that basically the sounds are this character who's only in the credits is given in the name the female,
Mm-hmm.
and we hear her making noises, and we realize she's practicing human speech.
Right. She's learning English.
She's learning English. And these shapes, these elliptical shapes, come together and form a human eye.
Mm-hmm.
And then we move to the side of the road where we see a woman who is dead. And based on the way she's dressed, we have to interpret all this because we're never told anything.
No.
There's a woman on the side of the road who's dead, and she is dressed. We presume the woman is a prostitute.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's wearing scantily clothes, she's wearing fishnets. She is taken to a place that looks like it's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
And it's a room full of white light. And she's placed in this, and there's a woman that comes in, played by Scarlett Johansson, who takes her clothing.
Mm-hmm.
And the movie tells us kind of where it's going right away, because the woman, the dead woman, there's a close-up on her face, and she has a tear rolling down her face.
Right. Like she's not dead.
Well, or maybe dying.
Or, yeah.
But what I got was that the Scarlett Johansson character essentially is an agent of whoever these aliens are.
Mm-hmm.
And she's sent here to do what she does. But in order to do that, she is sent to be the replacement for whoever this woman was.
Mm-hmm.
There's a handler that always follows her around, and it's a guy on a motorcycle,
Mm-hmm.
played by a professional motorcycle rider named Jeremy McWilliams. And we don't ever know his role. He doesn't ever have any connection with her. He seems to just be there to clean up the mess, and keep her in line.
Mm-hmm.
And but anyway, she's the Scarlett Johansson character, and this is really great, has donned a human skin and is going out into the streets of this really strange, small, almost nothing town in Scotland.
It's around Edinburgh.
It's around
I
Edinburgh.
believe.
And she's wearing, ironically, another skin, a fur coat.
Mm-hmm.
But she drives this white van, and she goes around, and she rolls down her window, and she talks to these men. And she sort of sizes them up, because I think what she's looking for is men who are alone,
Mm-hmm.
men who, through their conversations, she surmises will not be missed.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know how it is when we're out with people we don't know. They'll always give you a signal, particularly women.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when we were dating, you and I are both married, but when we were dating, you'd go out with a woman, and she would casually slip into the conversation about, well, my mother's waiting for me at home, or something like that, or
Mm-hmm.
my brother is expecting me to call, or something, just something to let you know that they will be missed.
Right.
She's looking for people that are not like that.
Mm-hmm.
Young, lonely, horny young men, to put a crude term on it. She takes them back to this house, into another space. This time the space is completely black. And when she takes them back, they strip down, and they're about to, apparently impervious, apparently not really realizing where they are.
Right.
And they strip down, she strips to her underwear, and they begin to sink. The guys begin to sink into this murk. And suddenly, they have no skin. And whatever meat goes down this plank into this vat.
Mm-hmm.
And we're presuming that they're being processed into food. It's a horrible idea, and it's executed in a way that is very, very cold-blooded.
Mm-hmm.
But she does this several times. I showed this film to a friend of mine, to a coworker of mine, recently. His response was very telling. He said it's very repetitive,
Mm.
because she does the same thing over and over again.
Right.
She takes these men back. The same thing happens, and one thing that happens is one of the guys who sinks into the murk looks over and sees the last guy she picked up,
Right.
and she does this, and in between doing this, you get all of these shots, all of these scenes where she'll be on the street, and she's observing.
Mm-hmm.
She's watching other women. She's watching other human beings in there. She'll watch women with their babies. She'll watch women trying on makeup. She'll watch women trying on clothes.
Mm-hmm.
She'll look around. There's a scene where I couldn't really figure out what she was doing. It's almost like she fakes a leg injury. And there are these people that sort of crowd around her, and it's almost like she's testing them to see what their reaction will be.
Oh,
And
when she falls flat on her face?
yeah, when she falls down, yeah. I could never tell if she did that on purpose or not, but
See, I didn't think so. For that, because that was after she had lured the I don't know what the technical term is, but the guy with the Elephant Man syndrome.
yeah,
And that
neurofibromatosis, something.
thank you. So she lures him back. She gets him to sink, but he doesn't die. You see him out in the field, naked, running back to the city.
She lets him go.
Yeah. So she starts to have a connection.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at some of the things leading up to that, she stares at the mirror. There's that one scene where she's just standing there, blank stare, and the handler, the motorcycle rider, is just like walking around her like she's in a sleep mode or something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of led me to believe that she's either growing into something different that their culture doesn't know,
Mm-hmm.
and so she doesn't quite know how to process it, or she could be an android with some sort of a learning AI that is changing and it's not processing it properly, so she just kind of falls. She just kind of shuts down for a minute and then she gets back up in character. I'm not sure.
Well, in the book helped me along with this. Basically, the species that she belongs to has a body structure that is somewhere close to like a llama.
Hmm.
And um, when she gets to the, basically what they've done is she's been surgically altered,
Mm-hmm.
so that she can walk on two legs. And so has the motorcycle rider, and so that they can move among human beings and not be detected.
There's more
Um,
than one motorcycle rider, though.
I only
There's
know
like three of them.
I only knew one.
Do you remember in the scene when she goes missing and there's like three motorcyclists
Oh yeah, yeah.
riding out in different directions?
I never caught on to that. See, that's the thing.
Yeah,
Every time you watch this film, you'll pick up something different.
I think
Um,
there's more than just her, and I think there's definitely more than just him
mhm,
going around the city. And he called in help to
mhm.
help find her because he couldn't find her. She stopped doing what she was supposed to be doing.
Well, she ran off at one
Right.
point. You were talking about when she looked in the mirror. You're talking about when she
Hmm.
comes down the stairs after killing that guy, and she
Yeah.
sort of looks. That's not a mirror. It took me a while to figure this out, but it's not a mirror. It's a porthole. Um, when he sank into the blackness, and she came down the stairs,
Uh-huh.
she's not looking in a mirror. She's looking at him. It's a window into
Oh.
whatever. Because we should explain. She goes to this tiny little house, and she goes up the stairs.
It's a
And
really run-down, abandoned house
right,
outside of this tiny little town.
and whatever it is that she's got upstairs is this weird room that she's created with this tank. And but when she comes downstairs and she looks in the mirror, it took me a while to figure this out. She's making sure that what she was supposed to do has been done.
Hmm.
So she is looking at herself, but and there's a reflection, but she's actually looking at him. This is one of those movies that you will pick things up every time you watch it. Just little things, just tiny little things. Like you were talking about, there's a character in here. The only character who's ever given a proper name is Adam, and that's
Mm-hmm.
the disfigured man. And she actually has a conversation with him in the van while they're
Mm-hmm.
driving back to the house, where he wonders if she's picking at him, if she's playing a joke on him, because this
Mm-hmm.
beautiful, gorgeous woman has picked him up. Why? He says he's used to being teased and made fun of,
Mm-hmm.
so he does not go out in the daytime,
Right.
and he goes out at night to go to the grocery store, and that's when she picked him up. There's
Mm-hmm.
this wonderful thing that happens when they're talking. There's this insert shot where he's pinching the back of his hand,
Right.
trying to like wake himself up. It's like, is this real? Is this really happening? And I don't really know why, particularly this man, but something about her association with this man sparks her interest in humanity beyond just the mission.
Mm-hmm.
Something about him, it's a strange thing to say, touches her heart,
Mm-hmm.
and she wants to become something more. There are moments in this film where she observes humanity. There's a strange moment at the beach
Mm-hmm.
when she goes out. There are four people there. There's a husband and wife, their baby, and then a guy in a wetsuit.
Mm-hmm.
And I never could figure out the purpose behind this scene. She the mother goes out into the water and starts to drown. The
Mm-hmm.
father goes in after her, and I think he starts to drown, if I remember correctly. And then I think the
Mm-hmm.
guy in the wetsuit tries to help.
And he gets the guy out, the
Right.
father out, but then the father goes back in. See, the reason that this is here, there's a few things. First, she knocks the guy in the wetsuit on the head and takes him back
Yeah.
as part of her mission. The other thing is, when you're listening, if you can hear on the radio, the the guy is a professor at Edinburgh University, and he didn't show up for work the next day, and there was a missing persons thing filed. He, the guy that drowned, the woman and the baby are the only people in the entire movie that are reported as missing.
Okay. Because the scene ends with the baby sitting on the beach
Right, crying.
crying, and the character, the Scarlett Johansson, tentatively I think is named Laura. We hear it in conversation. I think that's the name she gives. Walks by the baby and just leaves it there
Right,
and
crying.
crying.
And yeah, in the car, the next day, you hear on the radio that this guy was a professor at Edinburgh and he didn't show up for work. So now there was a helicopter search, but that was called off because of fog
Mhm.
and stuff like that. So this is now the guy in the wetsuit from Czech Republic, I think, from Prague, was like the fourth third or fourth person that she did this to,
Yeah.
and the only, and it goes to show you that these people are disappearing and no one knows, but this guy with connections,
Mm-hmm.
with a job, with a family, is reported as missing, and that leads you to understand why she's taking the ones that she is, because they are not. No one's reporting them because nobody knows they're missing. The one guy, the first guy, was in business for himself. He was an electrician. So if he just doesn't answer his phone, he might not be there. He's not taking work that day, whatever.
And it's probably not going to be known for weeks or months that he's even missing
Mm-hmm.
because he doesn't really know anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things is Scarlett Johansson's performance is not in dialogue; it's all in her face.
Oh yeah.
And really, what she's doing in this is she's listening carefully to these men. She's listening carefully to what they're saying, and she's picking things out. Listening for cues. Girlfriends, mom, dad, sister, brother. Listening,
Family,
family,
going to
connections.
work,
Yeah,
meeting people.
I'm here at this bar every Saturday night, or something like that.
Right, right, right.
And, I'm down at the pier every something, Friday afternoon or something like that. Listening for those kinds of regularities, those kinds of connections. These guys don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
So when they disappear, like I say, it's days, months before even anybody knows they're gone.
Right.
If they really have any friends at all. And but something about this man named Adam seems to change the texture of her mission. Because when she's observing humanity, when she's observing what we do and our way of doing things, there's a moment when she decides she wants to be one of us, or wants to explore it further, and doesn't want to do this mission.
Right.
Because she runs off. And there's a scene where she gets on a bus, and I think there's a guy trying to hit on her. She goes away from the city,
Mm-hmm.
and she's trying different things. Like, for example, in the one scene that I remember most is she's sitting in a restaurant, and she tries a piece of
Mm-hmm.
cake,
Mm-hmm.
and she spits it out.
She has to. Yeah, she can't
Yeah,
eat
yeah.
it.
She almost, I don't know if you'd say she has a love affair, but she finds a man who cares about her.
Well,
I don't know how to describe it. It's not really an affair. It's just it's not really a pickup.
it's the guy on the bus. He says, "Do you need help?" And she says, "Yes." And that is the only word you hear her say to him.
Mm.
He goes shopping. He takes her back to his house. He lets her sleep in his bed while he sleeps in a cot in another room.
Mm.
And then he takes her out to some castle ruins or something the next day. And then they go back to his place and they start kissing. And she decides she's going to let him actually do what she's been luring men on the promise of.
Right.
And as soon as it happens, she jumps up and takes a lamp and look, she can't actually perform
Mm.
the function of sex, and she just kind of runs off.
Mm.
And then encounters she's in the woods and she encounters a creep. She finds like a lodge. He tries to rape her. She runs away. He tries again, catches up with her, and when he's struggling with her, her skin suit rips.
Mm. And underneath, she's this black ink, sort of
Mm-hmm.
almost like a mannequin that you'd see in the
Right.
He
And then
sets her on
it
fire.
after she like pulls the skin off and she turns it around and she's looking at the face, which is still blinking.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it's still under some sort of neurological control. And then he throws gasoline on her. She gets out of the skin completely. She burns up, and her handler is looking for her. But
That and that's the end of the movie.
that's the end of the movie. That's
Um,
it.
I thought of I don't know how it would pertain to the story we just saw, but at the end of the movie there are these ashes falling to the ground. I thought of Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
A little
You know,
bit.
the seeds, falling back to Earth. I don't know if it says anything about this film because that's not really the texture of this film, but I thought of that. Um, just that unknown. We don't know really what she is. But it's the whole movie is her breaking away from that mission and trying to figure out who we are.
Mm-hmm.
I thought about this, and then I thought, science fiction is probably the most maligned of all genres because most tentpole science fiction movies usually go in the same direction,
Sure.
particularly when it comes to aliens.
Mm-hmm.
Um, most science fiction movies do one of two things. They're either trying to follow Star Wars or they're trying to follow Alien.
True.
One or the other. It's the ones like this that break away from that and try to find some semblance of humanity. What's
Mm-hmm.
interesting is it's trying to find humanity in a very, very cold-blooded movie.
Right.
Um, there's not a warm moment in this movie at all ever
No.
for the
No.
entire running
No.
time. And
Which is about 2 hours, isn't it?
it's about that. But it doesn't feel like 2 hours. It does go by
No.
relatively quickly if you're really if you're really into what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
The music in this does not sound like
Mm.
anything you've heard before. It's again very alien. Um,
Well, the wonderful thing is, what was it? The composer, um, Mika Levi.
yes,
This was her first film as a composer. And then she did a short. Her next film as a composer was Jackie, which you and I both loved.
yes,
And the music in that was ethereal and weird and very emotive,
as was the tone,
similar to this.
as was the
Yes,
tone of the film.
exactly. So she has this Mika Levi has a very unique sound and a very unique concept of almost like Philip Glass minimalism,
Yeah,
using more sounds than music, but there's a theme whenever she finds someone that she's going to take back with her that cues you into this person's going to die, but this person that she's talking to isn't.
right.
And I think what captivated me most was that Glazer took everything that would have been in that novel. Like I said, I didn't read it. You have. Uh, and stripped it down to its bare bones and gave us the the idea of what was happening and let us fill in what we could.
We have the framework.
But right, he doesn't. He could have easily had Scarlett Johansson doing an internal monologue as voiceover.
Which would have ruined it.
It would have destroyed it, but it could have been done that way. The only other thing, and I should probably save this for our recommendations, but the only other thing that I can think of, at least in recent memory, that approached science fiction and the concept of not spelling everything out for you
Mm-hmm.
right away was Ex Machina.
Yeah, yeah.
Alex Garland's directorial
That
debut.
one's a little more traditional.
Yeah,
It's more of a full blooded story than this. But it's the same. I get what you're saying. It's again science fiction that is not, that breaks away from the general mold of trying to be either Star Wars or Alien,
right.
and really deals with aspects of what makes us human,
Hmm.
what is humanity. Um, I was really impressed, and I want to talk about this for a second because this drives me nuts. One of the big points of this movie, and one of the things people always love to talk about, and this is so shallow, is that at one point Scarlett Johansson in this movie is naked.
2.3.
Um,
She's naked throughout the picture,
well, in
we'll say.
particular, one scene when she runs away, there
Hmm.
is a scene where she's standing in a room, looking in the mirror, and she is um, examining herself.
Right.
I get so many people who know about that scene and who accuse me of loving this film only for that reason.
Mm.
And that's a very shallow, kind of
Hmm.
hateful comment because there is so much to this film besides that, and that scene is very clinical. The nudity is very clinical.
Right.
It's
Despite the fact that she is luring people men to their deaths through sexuality, there's very little, there's no eroticism in the movie
right,
whatsoever.
right.
And to be fair, it should also be noted, everybody knows that Scarlett Johansson's naked in it. There is actually full frontal male nudity throughout the
Oh
picture,
yeah,
too.
yeah.
So I actually kind of thought that it was evenly balanced. Like there's
Definitely.
actually at least three naked men and only Scarlett Johansson at the beginning and near the end
Mm-hmm.
that you really see anything of her.
Well, and the scene that is most famous for that is the fact that it's when she's doing the self exploration and she's looking in the
Hmm.
mirror
Hmm.
and she doesn't have any clothes on. And what I thought of when I saw that scene was I thought of a teenager, um,
Right,
really beginning
right.
to explore and understand their body and who they are and how they're, it's a normal human function. Again,
Hmm.
understanding humanity and trying to understand this form that we carry.
Hmm.
But I get all these people who always tell me that now you have to understand, you must understand. I chose this as the best film in 2014 because this is a challenging film, because it is a film
Hmm.
that rolled over in my brain over and over and over and over again. Um, in little bits, I always think about this because I love this kind of film. It's challenging, it's unusual, it screws with your brain, and to just relegate it to that one scene is really tacky because first of all it pulls away from
Right.
the moment, and um, second of all it kind of accuses me of something I'm not guilty of, which I'm not watching this
Hmm.
film for sexuality. I'm watching this film because it is such a mind bender in
Right.
terms of its story and its intention.
Well, it's kind of like what happened with um, Paul Verhoeven's Basic Instinct and Wild Things back in the 90s.
Right.
Basic Instinct is a really good detective thriller that is boiled down to Sharon Stone possibly flashing her
Yeah.
crotch.
Yeah.
And Wild Things, if you watch anything outside of the threesome scene in the pool.
Yeah.
That is a very complicated. As Leonard Maltin described it, there are more twists than a pretzel factory in that
Right.
movie. And that is also a really good thriller
Wild
that
Things
has
is a
that
movie
one.
that comes up with a story so complicated that it's still explaining itself over the closing credits.
Right.
I love it for that. But
and there are things that like you watch these pictures, and yes, there are these scenes that sometimes are put in for sensationalism so that there can be a little bit of a drive. I know that Martin Scorsese's first picture, Who's That Knocking at My Door,
right.
with Harvey Keitel, there's this scene that's like a flashback to Amsterdam with Harvey Keitel having sex with a prostitute. And the only reason it's there is because the producer was like, you got to put in some nudity or I can't sell this thing.
Yeah.
And it's completely out of place with the movie. Spectacular movie, except for that little weird diversion.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, these kind of things are put in there to make things pop and to have something to market the picture on. Mm-hmm. That are completely not indicative of what the actual movie is about.
Right.
Disclosure, the Michael Crichton novel, it's a terrible movie, first of all. I don't want to put that in the category of you're misreading this. That is all based on that one scene with Michael Douglas and Demi Moore, and that's the only reason you need to watch that movie, and you don't need to watch that movie because even that scene's not good.
And Demi Moore is terrible in that movie.
She's awful in that movie. And what was it that the what was it? Wesley Snipes and Sean Connery, Rising Sun.
Rising Sun.
Also from the 90s was replete with let's throw in some sex to sell our movie.
And let's treat women like crap just to, you know.
Oh my God, the misogyny. Ugh.
And it culminated with Showgirls. I mean, just treating women like trash.
Which is the exact opposite spectrum of Paul Verhoeven from Basic Instinct.
Well, and
sometimes
I think
he's fantastic, and sometimes he's just terrible.
I think Basic Instinct also tried to kind of trashed women too. I mean, it was really it was a trashy movie. It was just it was a like a Black Widow kind of a thing, like don't trust the woman and stuff like that. I mean, Paul Verhoeven isn't exactly a feminist, but well, let's talk for a second about Jonathan Glazer. Because Jonathan Glazer is a British director who does not make a movie every year. I think he's best known for Sexy Beast.
There was Sexy Beast in 2000, then Birth with Nicole Kidman in 2004, and then this in 2013. Mm-hmm. He's got another one, I guess, apparently written, but I don't know when it's coming out.
Well,
There's also a music video director. He did some Radiohead videos.
Yeah, you can see a lot of his experience in music videos in this, because there's a lot of lingering shots. There's a lot of there's sometimes in this movie there's rarely ever walking. You know, the standard scene. You drive in the driveway, you get out of the car, you walk to the door, you walk in the front door, you put your keys down, you go to the bedroom, take your shoes off. There's not a lot of that here.
Right.
You kind of have to catch up with where the movie is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not hard to do. If you just get yourself on the right wavelength, it's not hard to do, but there are times when it does jump from one thing to the other.
Right.
And there'll be times when you just cut to her just kind of there in a place, and you're like, oh well, she's there, but you don't see her go there. But this director Jonathan Glazer, he always does this. His films are always kind of a what's it. You can't categorize it. And his plots are always interesting. I loved Birth. Birth has a plot that I love. Nicole Kidman plays a woman who's about to be engaged. When her husband drops dead of a heart attack while jogging. 10 years later, she's about to marry somebody else, and she has having an engagement party, and a little boy shows up claiming to be the reincarnation of the former fiance. And the movie is not about whether or not he's the genuine article. The movie really is about how it's really these people at this party having a rumination about death and about reincarnation, about what is life, and it's really, really about that. Mm-hmm. Even though it does come to a conclusion about whether or not this kid is what he says he is. But Glazer does that. He places questions in your head about the nature of humanity in these two films. I can't really say I saw it in Sexy Beast, but because Sexy Beast was more of a thriller,
right,
and gave us probably one of Ben Kingsley's best performances.
That's true. That's true.
He's best at asking us questions, and then ending his film really with a question mark.
Mm-hmm.
It's always rolling around in your head. And he makes interesting choices. And one of the most interesting choices he makes in Under the Skin is to cast Scarlett Johansson.
Right.
Had he cast somebody we didn't know, had he cast a complete unknown, I don't think the film would have... I don't know if it would have worked as well, and I don't think as many people would have come to this film.
Right.
We know her. We know her from other movies. We know her from the Avengers. We know her from this and from that. And
this was post-Avengers ScarJo.
Yeah, this was when she was really becoming something. She was really becoming... she was a major star. And by a complete irony, I saw this film on the same weekend that Lucy came out. And here's a strange thing. They're almost similar. But in the way that Hollywood deals with a subject, in the way that an independent film director like Glazer deals with it. Lucy was just a thriller about a woman who gets
Besson.
It's Luc Besson she gets a drug and it turns her into this superwoman who can do anything. Despite that, is still running from men with guns. I never figured that out, but
I still haven't seen Lucy. I kind of want to, just as a fun thing, but yeah. I'm not a big Besson fan.
I'm not either.
So
I have to take him at face value because, to tell you the truth, he's never made a movie that didn't drive me nuts.
Yeah. He's I think he gets a little bit more credit than he deserves for being. I think he gets credit for being aloof when he's really just dismissive.
And it's all because of the success of The Fifth Element. I think The Fifth Element gets him a pass.
And for some reason, The Professional, I've never... Yeah. We can talk about him another time, but yeah. I've never been a huge fan of that movie. And I've been in love with Natalie Portman since I saw her. She's 6 months younger than me, so ever since I saw her the first time, I'm like, ah!
That was her first film.
Yeah, it was. And I've never been a huge fan of Besson.
Yeah.
He's a better writer than he is a director, and he's not that great of a writer, except when he comes up with a character that other people start to use.
Yeah.
Like La Femme Nikita, the show Nikita on whatever network it was, wasn't a terrible show. Mm-hmm. But he didn't really have anything to do with it, which is probably why it wasn't that bad.
Yeah. But coming back to Under the Skin, I've always wondered. I haven't ever met a woman who's seen this movie, but I would love to know. I hate to use this term, the female perspective, because there's a sense in this film of the character Laura struggling to be a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Not just to be human, but to be a woman. I think it's easier to be a guy, probably easier to try to be a guy than it is to be a girl, because women have so many things pushed upon them, so many expectations
Mm-hmm.
pushed upon them, and you actually feel that in this character,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that the makeup, the clothes, the things that are required of her, even down to the scene where she tries to have sex, and all of
Mm-hmm.
that. It's all kind of pressed upon her, and I think if the movie were a gender switch, it wouldn't have worked.
No,
And
no,
it's
not at all.
interesting. It's an interesting perspective because she's picking up men. First of all, um, she's dressed like a prostitute.
Mm-hmm.
She's wearing a large fur coat. She's got dark hair and this shock of red lipstick, and she's dressed like a prostitute for most of the time. And she's picking up men and going through the rituals. So going through the rituals of the things that a woman would do to try and pick up a man, looking attractive
Mm-hmm.
for them. So that weight is upon her. And as I said before, when people accuse me of liking this film because of the nudity, um, this movie challenges the male gaze in a
Mm-hmm.
lot of ways. Because you can say, yes, there's nudity in it, but you can't say it's sexy at all.
No.
Because it's trying to strip everything down to its bare essence, and see it through her eyes, through eyes in which none of this is sexy at all. And
It's all functional.
it's all functional. It's all for the mission.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that when I love the way this film is shot, because for most of the time when she's on the mission, the camera is tight on her.
Mm-hmm.
When she escapes, when she abandons the mission and she goes off to the coast, the castles and all of that, there are these wider shots, I guess representing the freedom that she's feeling, but
Mm.
it doesn't focus as much on her. There are long shots late in the film
Right.
that are not present early in the film. And maybe signifying the confusing wasteland that she's sort of escaped into. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
This is a film that I know that I will continue to study. And I know I sound like I'm blabbering, and I apologize, but it's a film that...
No, I mean the picture is very complex, and it requires multiple viewings. I had always wanted to watch it again, which is why I was glad that you brought this up as a pick, because uh, it's been mulling around in my head for the last 3.5 years since I first saw it. It came on Amazon Prime back when it was after it had been out for like 6 months. I had heard a podcast, a film spotting podcast, where they reviewed it, and was just very fascinated by what they had to say. Like I have to find this movie. I have to watch this. And it showed up on Amazon Prime, and I watched it, and I I liked it because it was challenging, but it was one of those that I wanted to revisit that I never had a chance to, uh, because like we've mentioned before, we're critics. We watch stuff all the time. New movies usually don't get repeat viewings for me,
Right.
with the exception of if it's a kids movie that my son adores, then I have to watch it a lot.
Yeah.
But other than that, I really don't get a chance to revisit it. Like I'd still love to revisit Terrence Malick's Tree of Life. I've only seen it once. Um,
I'm glad
haven't
you brought that
been
up.
able to go back to it. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up because I love these films. I love this and The Tree of Life and Neon Demon and movies like this that break that mold and they go away and
Mm-hmm.
they forget the narrative and they just show me images and I have to meet the movie halfway.
Mm-hmm.
So that way I know that the director is reaching out for me.
Mm-hmm.
He's not selling me a product. He's reaching for me. He wants me to think
Right.
while I'm watching
Right.
this. And it's always irritating when I come away from a movie and I have nothing.
Right.
That is a frustrating experience. Most of this movie is unexplained. I
Mm-hmm.
like that about it. It has dialogue, but it's not necessary. I mean, you could have taken all the dialogue out of this movie.
Yeah,
There's no
you
di-
don't need it.
You don't need it. You don't need it.
Nothing is expository. So there's nothing that tells you what's going on.
Right.
So largely it's just
And
to fill in some.
and to an American audience, this is a strange film in that it takes place in a part of Scotland we're largely unfamiliar with. Most of the actors in the film, which by the way, were shot without their knowledge. Scarlett Johansson was
Yeah.
driving around with in this van with cameras mounted in it, and she was capturing these men without their knowledge, and some of them signed waivers, releases. We can't understand half of what they're saying because their accents are
Right.
so thick.
It's like I saw a Ken Loach movie maybe 15 years ago called Sweet 16.
Yeah.
That I had to put the subtitles on, or actually it came in theaters with subtitles. I put the subtitles on the DVD because I couldn't understand anything they were saying, and that's all. They were non-professional Scottish actors that haven't had dialogue coaches.
Yeah.
What is good? Is going to going g'day?
Yeah.
What?
There was a movie, I think, in the early 90s called Riff Raff, and the accents were so thick that the video company actually put subtitles on the movie itself because you couldn't understand anything they were saying.
Right.
But no,
it's English, but
yeah, it is English, but you just can't understand it, and also the vernacular is so bizarre, and they have to straighten it out for you. It's not that we're dumb Americans; it's just that we can't understand what they're saying. Sometimes some of these dialects, you just and they're speaking very fast.
Right.
And
I thought it was hilarious in parts when somebody's talking to her and she's got this British accent for some reason, just to fit in that she's lost.
Yeah.
She keeps asking for directions. She keeps asking how to get around. She keeps saying she's lost. That's how she gets the people into her van. So, for whatever reason, she's got a British accent. And when some of these guys are talking to her, she laughs like she knows what they're saying. And I just hear just sounds. Like, it's very funny. Like, and I really wonder if she knew what they were saying.
Right.
Or if she was just laughing, because sometimes she has this look on her face like,
I have no idea what you just said.
I don't.
Well, and it's alien to us here in America, where we probably don't know that area of Scotland. As we're sitting there watching this, and it's alien to her. It is a stranger in a strange land. If she had been in New York, I don't think it would have worked as well. It was a familiar place. If she had been in L.A., God, I can't imagine this movie in L.A. But if she had been someplace we are familiar with, it wouldn't have worked as well. And you put the captions on. Sometimes you put the captions on in the Blu-ray, and the words, it just says unintelligible dialect. Because even the captions don't know what they're saying.
Right.
But anyway, so I am going to continue to watch this movie for years to come because, like I say, I love movies like this. I live for movies like this. After all the junk,
Mm-hmm.
and I do love junk food, believe me. I sometimes even like bad movies. We're going to talk about one of those in a couple of weeks, but
Yeah.
I love bad movies. I love good movies. I love good junk food. But occasionally, inside of all of that, this kind of movie is really what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
It's challenging. It's difficult. It's different. It doesn't have a it doesn't have a texture that I'm familiar with. It doesn't have a tone that I'm familiar with. It's just a completely new experience. And that's
Right.
really
Exactly.
I think that's pretty much all I got to say here. I mean, um, this is more a visual experience than it is a conversation piece.
Right. It's hard to talk about, especially without. I mean, even if you don't want to give too much away, there's not a lot to give away
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you have to. If you're not going to go point by point through each minute of the movie,
mm,
which I have no interest in doing here,
yeah.
uh, it's hard to really fully discuss. But it's a remarkable movie, and if I had any recommendations to go along with it, I would say definitely something in the vein of Ex Machina or Tree of Life, even Christopher Nolan's Interstellar, Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey, things that are much freer for you to figure out.
But don't watch them back to back
No.
because it will mess with your head. Um,
Um, Another movie that I would say is, and this is kind of an out there recommendation. It's not necessarily thematically similar, but in a kind of a watching it to not really know what's going on until maybe the end, if you really stick with it and figure it out, is a 1977 Japanese horror movie called Houseu.
yeah,
Uh, by
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
direct Directed by Nobuhiko Obayashi. It is one of the strangest things I've ever seen in my life. Um, it really doesn't let you know what's going on until really the very end, um, and even then, it doesn't really try to make sense. It is absolutely one of the most insane things I've ever seen, and it's fun.
Kind of
It's one
brilliant
of those
that way.
weird fun. Yeah, it's brilliant because you don't really know what's going on. It's off the wall crazy, and you don't really care that you don't know what's going on because it is so weird and it's scary, but it's funny, and it's I would recommend that. We may end up talking about that at some point.
I
uh,
I want to say I really kind of racked my brain trying to find a recommendation for this because this doesn't fit with anything else.
mm-mm.
The only thing that I could ever really say is watch this with an open mind,
Yes.
stick it out, um, watch it for the right reasons. You know, not the nudity, because you can find that on the internet. I mean, if I have a recommendation, I'm only going to say to really understand how a movie like this works. Understand that how Hollywood would reject it, the kind of mangling that Hollywood would, that the unimaginative studio execs would put um, into play, and not necessarily Hollywood, but just a generic, not necessarily just throwing eggs at Hollywood, but a generic kind of effort like this.
A big
Watch this,
studio take on this.
yeah, watch this coupled with Lucy,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll see the kind of film, and of course Lucy is a French production. Um, put together by an American studio, but just to see how this kind of movie, balanced with a more traditional studio film,
Mm-hmm.
starring the same actress, doing a very similar take on the same story.
Mm-hmm.
One movie works and the other one doesn't. Lucy's not a good movie, but it's a standard movie with a lot of plot holes.
Right.
But just to see how a really creative, smaller independent film backed up against a large, unimaginative, big budget film.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, again, I'm blabbering, but watch the two just to kind of compare and contrast styles.
Yeah.
So,
And I think that about wraps it up for us here. As always, if you have any recommendations or anything you want to hear us talk about, please leave it in the comments. Drop us a line. We are always willing and able to talk about whatever the people want. Um, uh, Please leave us your likes, your upvotes, your thumbs up, your whatever, along with your comments. We really appreciate it. We appreciate you listening to us, and we.
what are we talking about next time?
Well, next time is my pick, and I think I've narrowed it down to I want to talk about Kill Bill.
Okay.
Both volumes, because I consider it one picture.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of my favorite films, and I'll bring us back into the present a little bit more than my past two picks. I'm gonna end up being the old movie guy on this, I think, somehow, but
Maybe not. Maybe not.
Maybe. So next time is Kill Bill, and after that, we're going to do a couple of episodes of movies that neither one of us particularly enjoy.
We're going to call this segment Fascinatingly Terrible. Movies that were just terrible in a very, very interesting way.
So coming up after Kill Bill is Jerry's pick, and we're going to be talking about God's Not Dead.
Can't wait.
And after that is my bad movie pick, which will be Dreamcatcher, Lawrence Kasdan's atrocity from 2003.
Which I haven't seen yet.
Well, I haven't seen God's Not Dead, so
Yeah.
we're both introducing each other to very bad movies.
Right.
So and then we're going to get back on track with some masterpieces to kind of cleanse the palate after that. So keep listening. We definitely appreciate it. And for Jerry Roberts of ArmchairCinema.com and ArmchairOscars.com, and on behalf of myself, film historian and film critic for TalkMovieToMe.com, Doug Heller, the pod bay doors are now closed.
The mission has been completed.